We're always updating. Now, I might not look prettier, but we are trying to make this course look prettier and be better for you. So I'm asking, please leave a written review, and don't just leave a star number. Actually leave several sentences. Let me know what you took away from this course. How did it help you or not help you? Give as much details as possible. That's the only way I can make this course better for you. And hey, since you now have lifetime access to this course, the course is going to get better for you too. So please don't just fast forward. Leave a review right now. If you've already left a review, you can always hit the edit button, top right hand portion of your screen, and you can leave a more detailed review. Thanks so much. I really do appreciate it.
So you've narrowed your key messages down to just 5. That's great. But we can't just tell people, here are my 5 messages, gotta go after 30 seconds. It doesn't work like that. You've got to do everything you can in the time you have with your speech or your presentation to make those messages not only understood, but remembered. Now, let me tell you a little secret here. Now, I say it's a secret. Every book on public speaking says this, and yet nobody ever does it. So somehow it's a basic concept that doesn't sink through. You need to have a story for every one of your message points. The biggest difference between great speakers and awful ones and average ones is that great speakers have a story to flesh out every single message point they have. It's not a luxury. It's not just to open the speech. It's not to close. It's not to be funny. It's to illustrate the point so the audience can remember it. Now, here's the other big fact of life. Every single client I have who's awful, who's boring, who just does a data dump, or who's just average, they never use stories. They just go in a straightforward way. Here's a fact, here's a bullet point, here's a number. It's straightforward, factual stuff. And it's awful. Nobody remembers it. And it's not interesting. Now, there's a lot of confusion about stories. People tell me all the time, well, TJ, I love stories, but I'm not a natural storyteller. Or I'm in finance and I'm just giving the numbers. Or I'm giving a purely technical speech. Well, let me disabuse you of those notions right now. There is no such thing as a financial speech or a technical speech or a PowerPoint speech. Those are all just silly concepts we have in our head when we're giving speeches. There's only 2 types of speeches in the entire world. Do you know what they are? That's right. It's either good or it's bad from the standpoint of the audience. When you are in the audience, you're not thinking, wow, I sure am glad this person's giving me a formal presentation. Or this sure is a good financial presentation. No, that's not what you're thinking of. The only thing you're thinking of when you're in the audience is, this is good, it's interesting, it's useful, I'm going to pay attention. Or, this guy's awful, it's boring, it's tedious, I'll look at the PowerPoint later. Meanwhile, let me check up on email from the office. That's the only thing going on in the minds of your audience. So great speakers adapt to the mindset of their audience. And that's what you've got to do. So you've got to figure out what are the ideas you're trying to communicate, and now how can you use every tool to make it come alive? And the number one tool you have at your disposal is a story. Now, a story doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be overly emotional. The only thing a story is you recounting a real conversation you had with a real person about a real problem in a real place. What was said, what that person said to you, what you said back, how it was resolved, and how you felt about it. That's it. That's all there is to it. All of us tell stories all the time. You're stopping off on the way home and you fill up with gas and someone cuts you off and curses at you. You don't then go home and tell your spouse, at 5:22 I left the office, at 5:32 I pulled into a gas station, at 5:33 there was a minor altercation and unpleasantries were exchanged, at 5:44 I left. I mean, that's kind of how most people give speeches. Boring, straightforward, fact, fact. You're going to say to your spouse, "You can't believe what happened to me today. I was pulling into the Exxon, and this guy comes in honking. I'm looking around. He's like, 'Get out of my way, buddy.' And he proceeded to take the gas pump and put it in as if he owned the place." I mean, that's how human beings talk. Might not drive a car, but I think you get my point. All human beings tell stories all day long. Now, what's different about a speech is people tell themselves, "Oh, I'm now giving a formal presentation. Let me push away all the stories and just stick to the facts and be concise." Let me tell you right now, your goal when giving a speech is never, and I mean never, to be concise. Your goal is to communicate. You can be concise, stand up, sit down after 30 seconds. Nobody remembered anything you said. You accomplished absolutely nothing. But maybe you speak for 20 minutes, 30, maybe 3 hours. If you're giving people good value, if you're really helping them, if you're doing something to make their lives better, their jobs better, their bottom line better, they'll listen to you for a long time. Now, I'm not saying just go on and on for 3 hours, but your focus should be on making your ideas remembered and making sure you have useful ideas, not simply being concise. That is a false goal that many, many speakers have. Stories sometimes take a long time. Maybe you tell a story in 30 seconds. It's not overly complicated. But if you have a point that you want people to remember, you're better off giving a story to make it meaningful. One of the points I'm going to stress in our next lesson is you've really got to practice on video if you want to see for yourself where you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how to improve. Now, I've been using video ever since I started 30 years ago, and there was a time when it was difficult. You had to bring in some production crew, and cameras were this big. These days, everyone's surrounded by video cameras. You've got one in your cell phone likely, iPads, webcams are everywhere. It's really, really cheap. Now, I remember a time more than a decade ago, I was doing my very first training over in Eastern Europe. And I was in a former dictator's palace, and it was quite elaborate. Now, I wasn't training a dictator. I was training a popularly elected prime minister of a small Eastern European country. But I was a little nervous. It was my first time in that part of the world. Prime Minister has all of his guards, his bodyguards with machine guns around. We're ready to practice the Prime Minister's speech. And he said to me, "Well, TJ,